Hi everyone, I'm Anthony O'Flynn and I have had the pleasure of spending today in Brisbane. That's obviously the Story Bridge behind me, so I really am in the middle of the city basically, and I had a busy day, so I really just wanted to get this video in for the solstice update, as today is actually the solstice. Solstice this morning, 21st of June, 6:53 a.m. with the moon in Sagittarius. And tomorrow, 26th of June at 11:09 a.m. we have the full moon in Capricorn, which is very much looming, and it is obviously a waxing moon at the moment. So yes, so here we are. We've already gone through basically the first half of 2024, and we are really in the quickening now. It really is becoming clear that we are in an accelerated pace of events with this continual tension between the new paradigm, the old paradigm, and also solstice, obviously sol, suns, and then this to stand still, essentially when the sun stands still, or appears to, and it is obviously the shortest day of the year. Personally, winter solstice in Australia is one of my favourite days for the whole year. Because we have basically a return to the sun, longer days, more sunshine, and warmer weather, so gradually coming. And so for that reason, the winter solstice for me is one of my favourite days for the whole year. I really notice, particularly from about mid-May onwards, the shorter days, and the seasons really do shift. I'm sure you're noticing it, and if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, then obviously you guys are enjoying Midsummer's Night. If you're in Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, enjoy the summer solstice, the longer days and the sunshine in the summer. You guys really deserve a good summer, as they say in Norway, which means good summer. So, god samna. So, this video will basically be concentrating mostly on the spiritual dimension of the awakening, because it will be a shorter one, and I'm just really going to go straight in on the main points I want to make. There's obviously a lot to talk about, and the pace of events is accelerating. I'm working personally with my own transits. We've had the transit with so many planets in Sagittarius. Obviously the Jupiterian themes really influenced me. So Jupiter in Taurus, I was really focusing on getting my hands in the dirt, doing a lot of practical projects, renovations, upgrades, planning, really on the physical dimension, which was really enjoyable. I really enjoyed that connection and amplifying that aspect of my being. And now, of course, Jupiter has moved into Gemini. So that's going to be quite a change of gears, which I'm already feeling, and we'll see. My plan is using that transit to actually produce more content on the internet, social media, and a few other things, which I'm going to be speaking about in detail when the time comes. So for today, for the solstice, really, first point to make is that there's been a purification at the mental level, which has been quite powerful. Sort of dropped off the energy of that a few weeks ago, but this was quite I think a lot of people might notice it, or maybe this will clarify your own experience of it, that there was a purification of the mind, particularly in the context of our own life path, our own life journey going forwards, and how we have been stepping into a new version of ourselves, and at the same time letting go of an old version of ourselves. So there was this kind of revision or a connection to previous versions of ourselves from going back decades ago, and releasing any not all, but some of the tension or the issues around that, basically. So that's been like a clearing, essentially, at a mental level. Obviously there's still a lot more to do with that, and at an emotional part of it, but basically, to summarize that, it's been a lot about making peace with our past so we can accelerate our own awakening moving forwards. And I guess there's a lot more to unpack with that theme, but I won't elaborate any further on that now, but just to say that it's been a good thing, but I think it's been very challenging for a lot of people to really look at the person that they were and realize they didn't have all the answers, they didn't have it all together, they weren't perhaps that harmonious, they weren't perhaps that integrated with the superior energies in this way. But that's the whole journey of that we're all a work in progress. So we've all come through that, we're on the other side of it now, and it's going to be exciting to see where the next chapter of this journey awakens us, which is going to lead on to the next point I wanted to make, which is what I'm referring to as a stripping of the ego. That's just the phrase I'm giving to it. Your own interpretation of it will be valid for you. But what does that look like? What does that mean? Well, in order to integrate into the more superior energies, there needs to be a purification and of the ego. To say, does the ego actually get purified or not? That's debatable, actually, depending how you define it. But what I would like to say is that I'm seeing this with clients I'm coaching, with people that I know and so on, that it's already begun, but the process is now going to intensify. And the more dense, coarse ego we have, and our soul is on the path of awakening at the same time, the more challenging this period is going to be moving forward. And this will be ongoing. This isn't date specified, because look, we're having a lot of pride, and pride in ourselves, pride in our accomplishments, in our socioeconomic status, in the possessions we have, material possessions, in our gifts. Maybe it's spiritual egoism, maybe it's like being important in your career, or whatever it is, however it's showing up for you personally. This stripping phase is actually going to be deeply humbling, and this is going to hit the collective like a freight train, and there's no getting around it in a short point. People who aren't on the journey of awakening, those souls, which is totally okay, they'll be like killing it. They're rocking, they're doing great, everything's going great for them. That's a major red flag that they're not really integrating the superior energies of the awakening in this journey of the awakening, which is fine, but you'll find basically this statement that pride comes before a fall is really going to be a real dictum for many people. That, wow, you know, as people go through this shift, they'll look back and go, wow, well, I needed that kick in the ass from the universe because I just had so much ego, I was so proud, I was so arrogant. And so the real theme is integrating humility, which, as I've said before, that is a theme for the entire Australian collective, because the entitlement is just absolutely incredible, even down to the way people drive in Australia now. It's quite staggering. So this stripping is for our highest good. It's for to engage the higher frequencies, and this will look like losing your job, having financial problems, getting a divorce, aging and losing the attributes of youth, all various themes around generating genuine humility. And this sort of ego stripping is essential. That I've noticed that some people in the earlier who have progressed through the awakening for a longer time have actually already gone through a lot of this process. But the important thing is that we need to learn these lessons, because if we don't, it's going to keep coming around, cycling around again and again. And it's really like, are we going to cling to this identity of ourselves? It's really a lower 3D identity of being successful in 3D, or are we going to actually have a more soul embodied experience and live from soul and experience this awakening of the soul, which is not black or white. It's in shades of grey, and everyone will have a unique experience and journey through this, which is the beauty of it actually. But the consciousness that is calibrated or integrated is always going to be the same at the end. So this is something to really contemplate as we experience these shifts. What is the universe trying to get me to understand? In what ways am I being asked to grow through this? And particularly at a material level, so we can see the external world shifting now as we enter major economic challenges, and here in Australia, that's really only the beginning of it. People think things are going to turn around for the next year or two, and as I said at the start of the year, there's no way interest rates were going to go down. That was just a ploy to get everybody into debt, so then when the tide goes out, people can see they're going to struggle with their debt repayments, and if you people have people debt, then they're easy to control. But I don't want to make this video too much about political, economic, social things, but there is a tendency, the spiritual bypassing, which I'll come to, or let's talk about it now, in the classical spiritual movement. In my book, I really defined the three aspects of the awakening, like a Venn type diagram, and that's the New Age community, the Truther community, and the classical spiritual community, which you will find you'll be perhaps part of all of those, and one more dominant. I'm not suggesting one is better than the other, although I have made comments previously that I think that people who are involved in classical spirituality, what is that? Well, that's Buddhism, Christianity, Tantra, Vedanta, Dzogchen, all those traditional paths, which are definitely valid. The problem with it is, though, is there's a lot of spiritual bypassing there, and definitely in the New Age, as far as the spiritual growth, really. There's a lot of stagnation in the New Age. The New Age is not maturing in the way that I'd hoped. And then there's spiritual bypassing, and then the spiritual bypassing of elements of the classic spirituality is things like, well, that doesn't affect me. And people won't get the wake-up call as far as the external events until, it'll be your son that comes home wearing a dress. It'll be your mum who develops cancer from the magic potion. It'll be your landlord that puts up your rent $200 a week. It'll be your bank mortgage payment that you can't service and default on your payment. You'll be retrenched from your job. It'll be your small business that goes bankrupt, until you actually start to get the message that the personal is political, which is a real statement from the counterculture in the 60s. And while I don't want to digress too much on that point, I always seem to, the events that are happening externally in the world now are there to support our spiritual growth, but unfortunately there is a disconnect between many, I'm speaking generally now, not for everybody, particularly the New Age and elements of the classical spiritual path, where people are trying to bury their head in the sand and do this sort of spiritual bypassing where I don't need to become active and find my voice in the world because I'm so detached. I'm so detached to all these events. The world is an illusion, everything's Maya. I mean, I find these concepts to be true at the highest level, and then completely ridiculous with the people that are actually claiming to live like that. And as I said, it will be when those events happen that it'll all become very real, and so on. I won't be able to go out of my house. I won't be able to travel. I won't be able to go on my spiritual adventures, these sorts of things. So, but everyone will do it at their own pace, and that's fine. But this is a reflection also of the fact that there is a splitting in the consciousness. So of those three groups at the moment, as a generalization, I do feel like that the awakening community, the activist truth community, they are probably the ones that are starting to integrate the more spiritual concepts of things more, even if it's unconscious, because they are using their life experience as a vehicle for evolution, even if it's unconscious. Whereas there are aspects, and again, I can't reiterate this strong enough, there's a generalization of the other two groups that they are trying to dodge reality in a certain way and so on. So again, this is just my opinion. You have a different opinion, great, you're welcome to it. So going on to the next point I wanted to make was the splitting in consciousness. It's becoming actually more apparent, particularly when you come somewhere like the city, like I've been into today, that this is really occurring. And it's interesting to see that a lot of the people who are on this path of awakening, are even at the organic physical world, are now starting to disconnect from the mass collective, not just physically but mentally and spiritually and so on as well, but moving out of the cities, starting to even grow a little veggie plot in their little garden in their house in the urban areas, planning for these things, wanting to do these things, that there's a desire there, which is the first thing. And not that is really the whole awakening, but that there's a split, that there's an awareness or a recognition that this paradigm is failing. This paradigm will continue to basically collapse on itself, and at the same time the new paradigm will emerge. And the reality is that the decline of the existing paradigm appears more powerful because it's the only one that we've known. So it's the only one that we've ever experienced and ever lived in this lifetime. So we don't necessarily have the ability to see the emerging of the new, but it is actually there, and it's in many different ways. Even simple things that we take for granted, like the internet, for example, blockchain, cryptocurrency, the emerging technology in terms of for vehicles and cars and battery and so on. Like, for example, like there are now they're called solid generators. They're technically not generators, they're batteries that are available that can basically power your house or most of your house using solar panels that are mobile but are portable, not like the old systems and so on. And this is like kind of part of the Aquarian age, the Pluto and Aquarius sort of thing. And the developments with this are happening very quickly. And also I look at I know a lot of people really don't like the electric cars and all that phenomenon, which I totally understand and agree with. But it shows that there's a leap happening, that we're moving away from ICE, internal combustion engine, and we're moving on to alternative power sources. And this won't happen from A to B in one go. And the electric car, and it's prolific now, they're everywhere, right? The fact that they are becoming popular and are even financially feasible, it shows that there is seeds of new paradigm that are being born. And there's lots of other examples of it, but even the prolific awareness now of alternative ideas around spirituality and people practicing them, even that's changed in the last 20 years. I mean, there's so much evidence that the new paradigm is emerging, but it depends where you look and focus your attention, and how you define your experience. But having said that, there's still obviously this continual push for this globalist agenda that's been going ahead full steam, really. But there's been so many tactical errors made by them over the last 4 or 5 years that they can't put the toothpaste back in the tube anymore. Too many people know what's going on now. So
as close as possible to where
it's doomed to fail. But the real question is, how much damage are they going to do? How much collateral damage will there be along the way? So this is this splitting of consciousness is actually becoming more clear. I think in the beginning it's really like at the mental level. There's been people who have been not really connected to the mainstream society for decades now, and this number is growing. That doesn't mean that people don't have a job, say in a corporation or something like that. It's a state of mind around it and their relationship to that external world that doesn't define who they are. And that's part, again, of the stripping process, is that people will start to gradually move into their essence, that they won't be defined by, I'm this title of my job, or I live in this suburb, or I drive this car. So obviously this is going to be very, very difficult for the upper middle class, because they just define who they are so much by their material wealth and their position in society. And yet, as we saw in the pandemic, that soul group was the one that was the easiest fooled by this whole scam, which is becoming more and more revealed every day. That, as a generalization, not everyone, that group of people, the well-to-do people, are simply the most driven to conform out of, not entirely of any soul group, but they are basically obsessed with the opinion of others, which ties them into the prison of conforming to the consensus reality and connecting to the hive mind, and to their own detriment, actually, much of the case, actually leading the hive mind, which is the definition of self-sabotage. But there you go. I mean, and yet at the same time, we have so many people who are away on this awakening journey that perhaps don't have even a proper profession, don't have any degrees from university, not highly educated, not highly mobile, not high income, and can see straight through the smokescreen of the mainstream media and all the illusions around that, which is a real testament to the fact that these people have developed their consciousness much more from lifetime to lifetime and are primed for the awakening coming into this lifetime, which is fantastic to see. So the race isn't run yet, but what I am seeing is that in the wake of the pandemic, whatever name you want to give to it, there has not been a significant migration of souls moving out of the intermediary zone, as I refer to it. I have the three defining soul groups, and of course this is a model, but this is all documented in my book. But what I had hoped for was, in the revelation of the scam and all the lies and all the destruction, all the deaths and all the rest of it that's coming out literally almost every day, that more people would actually be able to perceive reality, to develop this discernment, and actually start to integrate this quality of humility, and then move into the higher timeline. If you want to refer to it as timeline, I like projection of destiny better, because I find that this concept of timeline can be quite confusing, but it's just a label, it's just a name. For me, as I'm seeing it, this hasn't happened with the numbers or the scale of people that I had thought. That doesn't mean the race is run, but I thought that there would be more people, and the block on this is pride, because I think a lot of people realize something isn't right, and particularly with all the programs that they are through the mainstream media and through the various levels of indoctrination that are being rolled out, that more people they can see that something's not right, but they haven't come to the en masse, to the recognition and to develop this humility. So the real issue here is not the information or the knowledge or whatever, it's the quality of pride. And again, this is part of the ego stripping thing that I'm speaking about, that is really starting to intensify over the period we're in, and going forwards into the equinox, into the spring equinox. So this is a lot to think about. I guess I could make a lot of different other points on how I'm experiencing things and so on, but when I make these comments, I don't actually think that it's necessarily finished. These people are not going to migrate into this higher path, but the longer the stubbornness and so on, it gets harder. It will be harder and harder, and it'll also be harder and harder at the same time, which is a little bit of a paradox, to retain the worldview that the mainstream media is giving to people. That we have this net carbon thing, politics and the woke socialist agenda and so on. And the realisation that Australia is a socialist country will be the big one for Australia. And the question is, going forward, is going to be another trend en masse that I'm really starting to pick up on, is the question what should be the role of government? Not the government should do this, not should do that, we should have this politician, we should have that policy. What should be the role of government in the first place? Which is a big one, which is going to start to... It's not just an existential philosophical thing. It's should the government be engaged in social programs and be part of blatant social engineering, which has become normal in Australia? And why should the taxpayer be paying for that? So I won't go into it anymore, because you can see that is a really vast topic, and then it starts to go into specific policies and specific agendas, which this isn't the sort of video I wanted to make, at least for today. But what is the role of government is going to be a big one going forwards, and what sort of society do we want to create as a reflection of that? So that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. I do think that the awakening is going as it should. I think that the people on the journey and the awakening is growing, and there is a maturity happening with people on the path, which is really inspiring. And I think we can start to inspire each other more and unite more. We don't need everyone to do that. There'll be some people that you just can't reach. They're not wanting to go. It's too painful for them to realise how wrong their worldview is, and how that they've been fooled, and that they've been lied to, and they'll be lied to again. And if they haven't learned, they'll do the same thing again. They'll follow whatever the TV tells them to do, because in their world, that's the safest thing to do. To question that, as they experience it, is creating a world of unsafety, of doubt, of confusion. But having said that, at the same time, this is the final point I make, the rage in the Australian collective is growing incredibly. Like, people in this country are furious with much of the indoctrination, the propaganda, the misuse of public money, the pathetic performance of the politicians, the failed leadership, the socialist agenda, the crushing of small, medium enterprises, the inflation, the interest rates, the whole bit. I mean, choose your own adventure with that. Anyway, my battery's about to go. I'm gonna wind this up. I don't think that's healthy. It's not constructive, but I think it's a recognition that people are not happy in Australia. We used to be the lucky country, and that's all but a memory now. And it's the cost of living, it's the housing issue, it's the excessive migration. It's you can't really say, particularly at a federal level, many people who are having these opinions, that this current federal government has done anything right. I literally mean anything. It's that bad. But this creates the way for positive change, for positive activism, for people finding their voice, for a recognition of the dysfunction of this paradigm. And it will get more dysfunctional. That's one of the other final points to make, is that if people think things are going back to normal, then normal's gone bye-bye, probably sometime around the millennium, actually. It's just that the pandemic was the trigger point for people to recognise that things are not going back to normal. We're on a one-way ticket to this paradigm failing at all levels, and also the birth of a new paradigm. I'm excited about it. I really am. I'm excited about it. I think we all need to have a greater trust in the process, a greater trust in ourselves, more inner guidance, and obviously a greater trust in God. I'll be expanding on these spiritual themes more now that Jupiter's in Gemini, and a lot more to say on these topics. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Happy solstice, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now. We live in epic times.